The first boxing video game I ever played was Activision's Boxing for the Atari 2600. If you've never played it before, it is basically a top-down view, straight down from the top, where you see the top of each boxer's head, and then you see the two fists that you can manipulate left, right, left, right, left, right with the button, and you would try and hit as many combinations as you could in order to score as many hits as you could to try and get all the way back to 0 from the start, so 0 to 99. I played it a little bit. I really didn't get it, and while I do revisit it from time to time via Activision Anthology on the PS2, it's not really one of my favorite games. I tend to like ice hockey better, and I think more highly of sports like the big ones: football, baseball, basketball, hockey. So boxing has always kind of taken a back seat for me. The one exception to that, of course, being Mike Tyson's Punch-Out for the NES, a conversion or a reimagining of Nintendo's Punch-Out arcade game, which I've also played, although very sparingly, because it was not a game that I wanted to put a lot of tokens in because I really didn't understand how it played. It looked great, it sounded great because it had voice in it, but I really was out of my element. I didn't know much about boxing, I didn't know much about combinations, so it was just cool to watch and not quite as cool to play because it just kind of sucked up my tokens. So Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was a bit more forgiving, where each boxer had a tell or some visual sequence you could see that you knew that a shot toward you was coming, so you could take some kind of evasive action and then counterpunch. That's the way that Mike Tyson's Punch-Out worked, and it still works well today if you played it on the NES, or if you played Punch-Out featuring Mr. Dream on the Nintendo Entertainment System application for the Switch, for example, or any of the other kind of virtual console setups that Nintendo has had. So Nintendo's had decent success with boxing games, but when we look at the PlayStation, there's really only one boxing game that a lot of people think of when they think boxing, and they think about EA Sports Knockout Kings from 1998. This game was popular when I was working at FuncoLand in late 1998, and we sold a few of these copies. Boxing is definitely got its audience. It's a very specific audience. They know their boxing. They know the strategy in and out. They know the boxers inside and out. And the reason that this game was so significant was because it had Muhammad Ali licensed, so his likeness was in the game. So that right there was a big selling point. It was mostly sim, but also had some arcade elements, so you didn't feel completely overwhelmed when you were playing it. And as I mentioned, the game sold pretty well. Well enough, in fact, that there was a sequel just a year later, Knockout Kings 2000, again prominently featuring Muhammad Ali on the cover here. Get it on with the greatest. They even have the greatest name in the back. So EA had the boxing market covered. However, it was far from the only boxing game for the system. And that takes us to this episode of Unsealed's feature presentation. This is an arcade boxing game that Sony Computer Entertainment published and was actually developed by JVC. This game is called Contender. This game came out in 1999, again, just for the PlayStation. It sold well enough to warrant a sequel, although the sequel didn't sell very well. This is an arcade-type game. This is not a simulation by any stretch of the imagination. It does use some very basic boxing rules, and as you can see, some of the graphics, for 1999, for being completely honest, it looks a little rough. Nevertheless, Sony was one to know when it's time to throw their hat in the ring, no pun intended, and they saw the success that EA had with Knockout Kings, so it decided to go ahead and get this particular game localized. And this is the game that we're going to open up. And then I'll talk about my experience with the game, because the story is, well, I don't know if it's necessarily interesting, but it's definitely one of my more memorable situations from FuncoLand. So the front cover here, very shadowy, this black and white, almost like a Raging Bull type setup. And if we look in the back, prepare for the ultimate battle is what we've got in the back here. And I'll read off I'll read off what's on the back, because they usually do that for this show. So we have over-the-top boxing action, 7 different camera views, so trying to take advantage of the more advanced capabilities of the PlayStation and the graphics engine. Also, special knockout punches are promised. So what we've got here is step into the ring with the most vicious boxers in the world, or at least so this says. Master the art of delivering crisp jabs, brutal combinations, and jarring knockout blows. Battle through the local, national, and world ranks in the ultimate quest for the World Championship title. So obviously this is not sanctioned by anybody. This is a flat-out arcade experience, which again is not a bad thing. The actual science and sport of boxing is very intricate. There are a lot of strategies and techniques to understand, whereas a lot of people, when they want to play a boxing video game, they just want to hit somebody. So that's where the arcade boxing game really comes into play. 40 different fighters, each with their own unique fighting style. That's pretty interesting. Build a fighter's skills, stamina, and strength with every fight. This reminds me a little bit of Greatest Heavyweights for the Genesis, which did kind of the same thing. Save your customized fighter to a memory card and pummel a friend. And that was one of the cool things about the PlayStation was, of course, you could save your data to a memory card, bring it with your game over to a friend's house, and save your fighter so you could go ahead and just basically bring it with you. That was one of the more unique concepts of the memory card that we saw. We also saw that with the N64, and then later with the Dreamcast with the BMU, which had an animated screen that you could actually play little games on. But that's a story for another episode. So we're going to open this up, and then we're going to talk about it. This came out in 1999, as I mentioned, when I was working at FuncoLand as a store manager in 1999. So I do have some memories of this game in demo stations there, and I think I'm going to have to, there we go. Don't have my scissors with me, which is always a bad situation when I'm trying to open this live on camera. There we go. And of course, there has to be a train that goes by. Apologies if you hear that. But you only get one take once this is open, so we are rolling with this here. We do have, by the way, the ID sticker, the Contender ID sticker at the top that we will take off. We'll take a look at the disc on the inside. So as I mentioned, this came out when I was working for FuncoLand. I did put it in the demo stations. And one of the things that I will always remember about this game are the audio cues. Most notably, the corner guy just yelling at you to move your feet, like constantly, all the time. The corner guy would give the same like 4 or 5 pieces of advice, and they were the same thing every time, and you would get sick of it after a fight or two. Let's go ahead and open this up, and we'll take a look and see what the disc looks like on the inside. We do have something else on the inside too, and I will show you that here in just a moment. I'm going to turn this around so you can see, and it is basically the same as the front box art, that Raging Bull look. We also have a card from the PlayStation Underground. We'll take a look at that shortly. And the instruction manual has an ad for Medieval here, and I'll show that off in just a moment. We take a look at the PlayStation Underground card. I love looking at these. I did finally finish collecting all of the PlayStation Underground CD magazines. I'll be sure to do a repeat episode on those magazines later in the future. This is what the card looks like. It looks almost like a game show host answer card when you're on a quiz show. It's free, it says here. Join the PlayStation Underground now. The only way you can get free stuff, including members-only offers, exclusive gaming info, cheats and secret codes, and more free stuff that'll hit your mailbox when you least expect it. And that was, ladies and gentlemen, the coolest thing about PlayStation Underground and this whole period. As an adult, all you got were bills in the mail. So getting something from PlayStation Underground that was a demo disc or was some kind of mailer made going to get the mail worth it, because you never knew when this stuff was coming, and it was really awesome to get that kind of stuff. So that's what the imagery looks like. And you did have to put a stamp on there if you were going to send it in. You could subscribe if you wanted to. I did not, and I kind of regret that now. I wish I had gotten those brand new, because I certainly would have held on to those. All right, so let's take a look at the instruction manual now. Again, Medieval on the back of the case here, which got remastered for the PS4 in the last year or so. The manual is in color, although it is a weird tone of color. It got like this gray cement look to it. And there is there's the controller layout. It looks fairly basic. There's upper level guard, lower level guard, and that's something I could never do in boxing games is block. I'm always such a furious puncher, all Jake Paul style. If you watched that boxing match over the weekend, just a flurry of punches rather than blocking, which is why I'm terrible at those games. There's also swaying as well for defense. Your basic punches and special punches. Your special punches are mapped to the R1 and R2 buttons. Hooks and jabs and things. Welcome to the world of Contender. Now we get to this bronze look here. Over 40 world-class boxers. Contender pitting you against the best of the boxing world. Take your character on a long and testing journey from the seedy backstreet venues and sweaty gyms of the non-professional pugilist all the way up to the dizzying heights of world title fights where battles for glory of victory are fought. Contender is not just about fancy special moves. Packed with strategy, you must decide where your fighter's weaknesses lie and train him or her to overcome them. As you progress through the game, you'll be offered handy hints and tips from your trainer, Jackal. Spar with him at the gym and learn invaluable moves that will set you on the road to stardom. Contender is a difficult game. Only the very determined and skilled players will succeed. However, if you're getting frustrated, take a break and plan your strategy. How very Nintendo of Sony to print that. Watch your opponent for weaknesses. Time and effort will pay dividends. If you do gain world champion status, you'll be rewarded with special new characters. So again, you have your series of unlockables in this game for replay value's sake. So you have main event, exhibition, tournament, and options. Looks pretty thin there in terms of modes of play. Road to world title. The road to glory starts here, so that's your career mode. You choose your boxer. You can choose one of 8 different ones. And you can see that what the graphics look like. It's got that almost that CGI look over here, although it's not what the visuals look like. It's a bit more blocky in terms of the player models there. So you choose your boxer, and then away you go in your career quest. You can also just do an exhibition fight and also just get into a tournament, which is pretty cool, very much like a fighting game tournament where you take on around, it looks like 32. Yep, 32 fighters is what we've got there for the tournament. So some gameplay modes, not the most deep, but still some fun to be had here. Then in the back here, we have the control summary. This is something that you'd want to read. You could learn to play this over time, but I think in a boxing game such as this, even an arcade boxing game, it is important to look at the ins and outs of how to play. Talking about defense, tips from movement back here. So that is worth a read if you are going to be playing the game. There's also some statistics that are kept in the back as well. Then Victor Entertainment Software, not JVC, I apologize. Victor Entertainment Software is the development team behind this game, and Sony Computer Entertainment America did localize it. So this was something that had to be localized for the United States market. And that's pretty much all we've got here. There is some licensing for like Toughware and G-Shock, so there's some advertising to be had here if you do play Contender. It is not my favorite boxing game. If I had to play a boxing game for the original PlayStation, it's most likely going to be Knockout Kings or Knockout Kings 2000. Those just have more recognizable names, even though they are a bit more difficult. I do think that EA straddled the line pretty well between arcade and simulation boxing to make for a decent experience. And you can play one of 3. There were 3 of these games for the PlayStation, all 3. Of course, I have right here in my hand. They're not very expensive. You can probably get them for like $5 to $7 a piece if you are big into boxing. And there are more boxing games to be played. Knockout Kings would give way to Fight Night on the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube, and even a Fight Night on the Xbox 360. And of course, in terms of Nintendo, you can play Punch-Out or Super Punch-Out or even Punch-Out for the Wii, which is a very good game indeed. Also, just as kind of as a laugh, you can also play Rocky for the PlayStation 2 or the GameCube. Your chance to play as Rocky or maybe as Mickey if you can unlock some of the bonus characters in that game as well. In terms of Contender, would I recommend this? Probably not. It is important in that it's a boxing game, and boxing games are not all that prominent when you compare the sport to other sports available for any console. So when you do get a game, especially a first-party game, it's notable to take a look at. And I only paid about $10 for this, so you can get this game complete for probably half that. This was a new copy that I got. So if you're interested in Contender, you can grab it from your local game store or from eBay. It is not overly expensive, and you can check it out for yourself. That is all I have for this episode of Unsealed. I, the Retro Referee, thank you very much for watching. As always, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will do this again really soon. Take care.